I'm Jeff Strong. I'm creator of the Auditory Brain Stimulation Therapy Rhythmic Entrainment Intervention. And I'm also creative director and co-founder of BrainShiftRadio.com. In this video, I want to talk about why we don't use headphones with our programs. This really goes back to the beginning of when I started doing my research. When I started creating REI, I played live for people. And I played loud. And it was just live drumming, and it overwhelmed the person listening. There was nothing else they could hear and focus on, but I was in the room and I was interacting with the person as I'm playing for them. So I was able to moderate my volume based upon what I saw happening. And when we started making recordings for people and giving to them, I realized there was no way that they were going to be able to listen at the volume that they listened at with me playing live. And mainly because this was going to be overwhelming. It was going to become agitating because they weren't going to be able to tune into the other things going on in their environment. And this is especially true with the types of people I was working with really early on, which were children and adults on the autism spectrum who weren't necessarily verbal. They weren't necessarily able to articulate if they were bothered by something. You found out they were bothered by a behavior that would happen, and by then it's a little too late. So when I started putting the recordings together, I decided, you know what, let's play it really quietly in the background. As opposed to putting headphones on. And every other auditory program you're going to find out there, whether it's a tomatis-based program or a binaural beat or isochronic beat program, they're going to use headphones as the primary way of listening. And they're doing this for a couple reasons. The main reason is there's information unique to each side of the brain, each ear that they're delivering. So for binaural beats, in order to have the binaural beat effect work, you have to have two different frequencies being played in each ear. And the way the brain perceives those differences creates the pulsation for the binaural beat. The tomatis-based programs are relying on modulating and filtering frequencies, and they'll often do it differently for each ear. So you really kind of have to have headphones in those instances. We don't. We're not delivering different impulses to the left ear to the right ear. We're giving a rhythmic impulse that the brain's going to be able to perceive as a rhythm, as it is, because it's just musical rhythm. And I decided that headphones weren't a good idea for the main reason of, having come from the world of music recording. I was an audio engineer for a long time. I understood very clearly that the drum signals are very short but very intense auditory signals. They have a lot of what is called transients. It's a very high amplitude signal that's a very short duration. And what this means is you don't really hear it as being loud. So perception of volume is based upon the duration as well as the amplitude, the actual intensity of the sound. If a sound goes on for a fairly long amount of time, 20, 30 milliseconds or more, you're going to be able to perceive the volume higher than something that lasts just a couple of milliseconds, like a drumming sound does. Now we do compress a little bit the initial transient on our recordings because we don't want it to be super duper high compared to the rest of the sound. But even in then, it's still a very loud signal, very high amplitude signal. So we decided early on that if you're wearing headphones, it's really easy to have that volume be louder than you think it is. It could actually do damage to the ear. And given that our clients initially were people who were not setting the volume for themselves, weren't able to necessarily articulate if something were uncomfortable, we didn't want to add that into the mix. So we decided that we played in the background. Now we did have some people early on need to use headphones for one reason or another, so we worked with the families to moderate the volume, to make sure that the volume was set in a level that was comfortable. The parent would turn it on, listen, turn it down a little bit till they could barely hear it, and then we'd set the volume, make sure it couldn't be changed on the player, and then allow the child to listen to it. And as we were doing that, we noticed that the results for the people who were listening with headphones weren't as good as the results for people who were just listening open ear. So we started looking at why that might be. And this goes back to just the way we perceive sensory input, the way we are attuned to our environments. We perceive a lot more in our environments than we're consciously aware of. Our brain is constantly filtering out those unimportant pieces of information. Now you create some novelty and the brain wants to key into it. Drumming, the way I do it with these rhythms that are very variable, very chaotic in a lot of ways, always changing, always evolving, very quick. they're novel by nature of what they are. There's no rhythm, there's no groove that you can get into when you listen to regular music. If I'm going to play a traditional drumming rhythm, I'm going to play a groove and I'm going to stick with it. Rhythm that I talk about a lot is a 3-3-2 rhythm. It sounds like this. And this rhythm may go on not changing much. I'll throw some fills in once in a while, go like this. But the main groove is there. And so you get used to it. And after a while, you just kind of feel it. You don't really listen to it. It's not a threat. So your brain can tune it out. When the rhythm's always changing like we do with REI, and the idea here is to stimulate the brain by doing an unpredictable pattern that the nervous system needs to key into. And by doing that, the nervous system is constantly trying to decipher it. And this is what makes REI work. And we realized that by having this going on in the background at a low enough volume that there's other stuff going on in your world, a conversation happening in the room, or just the ambient noises that exist in any environment. Could be the refrigerator going on and off, could be a car driving by, could be any number of things that happen, is always shifting your awareness. And because the rhythms are happening in the background, you're always keyed into it on some level of what's going on. What is the next thing that's going to happen here? And that actually increases the effect of the REI drumming. So by having it on in the background without headphones, you have these competing sounds which actually improve the quality of your listening to the REI. You mask those out, and all of a sudden now that's all there is. And it takes on a different meaning, a different quality. It's not as hard to decipher, it's not as hard to key into, therefore it doesn't seem to work quite as well. So aside from the potential damage that can be done by having too high of a volume with headphones, having that ambient noise can benefit the quality of the recording, the quality of the experience that a person has. So in those rare instances that people need to use headphones or earbuds, we ask that you use a headphone or earbud that allows you to hear the world around it. You don't want a noise cancellation headphone, for instance. You want to make sure it's an open back headphone that allows you to hear what's going on in the world. That can be really beneficial. So that's the basic reason that we don't use headphones. The advantage with not using headphones is that now you can listen to it without being encumbered by having headphones on or earbuds in, or especially for a lot of people we work with, can't tolerate the feel of the headphones or earbuds. Now they can get the benefit of an auditory program. So definitely check out our demos if you haven't yet. Try them, open ear. Just play them in the background. What you want to do is you want to set the volume so you're not really noticing the music so much after a few minutes. You're going to notice it's on, you're going to be aware that it's there, but you're not going to be keyed into it. You're not going to make it the focal point of your awareness. Your primitive brain is going to be keying into it, trying to decipher the patterns, trying to create associations with it, and that's what's going to allow your brain to engage. So that's the basic bottom line here. I'm going to play it for a little bit. Play some REI rhythms. See what they feel like to you. You might need to turn the volume down a little bit on the video so that it is in the background. But I'm going to play rhythms that are constantly evolving, like we do with our custom programs, so you can see what that feels like. This will be at 8 beats per second to induce a sense of neurological calm. Here we go.